Part 5, Section 1, Chapter 6 of Short History of the Christian Church by John Fletcher Hurst. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 6. Continental Colonies, Dutch, Swedes, Huguenots, and other Protestants. The Dutch were among the most daring navigators of this period. Rejoicing in their new independence, they sailed over distant seas, and took possession of new territory with all the vigor and heroism which they had displayed in enduring the siege of Leyden and resisting the oppression of Spain. Their present possessions in the East Indies are still a testimony to their success on the Oriental seas. The Truth of the Christian Religion, by Grotius, written for the heathen world, was one of the strongest, as it was one of the first, pleas of the times for a universal gospel. America came in for its share of Dutch colonial enterprise. The discovery of the North River by Henry Hudson gave his country the first claim to Manhattan Island, now the site of New York. The Dutch erected there the first cluster of houses in 1614, which was meant as a trading station with the Indians. They established other posts along the coast, but this was always the centre of their trade, which consisted chiefly in the exchange of European articles with the Indians for furs. Little Dutch communities were established on Long Island, Staten Island, along the Hudson River, westward along the Mohawk, and in New Jersey along the Passaic Valley. They organized their first church in New York in 1628, though there is evidence that laymen called comforters of the sick, who came over with the original traders, gathered the people for worship as early as 1619, or earlier. It was not until 1623 that the first permanent Dutch settlement was made. Jonas Michaelius has the credit of organizing the first Dutch congregation, 1628. A church in Albany was created soon after. The established religion was the Reformed. The ministers, such as Frelinghuysen and others, who were educated and talented men, came directly from Holland. The Dutch language was used in the pulpit, and even continued in some cases down to 1764. When New Netherlands was ceded to the English, the name of New York was given to the town and the colony. The population of the town at the time of the cession was about 10,000. The colony of New Sweden was established by Swedes, who settled on the banks of the Delaware in 1638. They brought with them the Lutheran faith, and lost nothing of their Protestant attachment by removing to the New World. Gustavus Adolphus took special interest in the colony at its inception, but was killed on the victorious field of Lutzen before its success was assured. The pastors of the colony paid special attention to the conversion of the Indians. Luther's catechism was translated into the Indian tongue. Campanius and Acrelius sent back minute accounts of the progress of the colony, and their works are two of the best accounts of American colonization extant. There was early conflict with the Dutch, who asserted their claim to the Swedish territory. Peter Stuyvesant, governor of New Netherlands, led an expedition against the Swedish colony in 1655, which, after 17 years of prosperous existence, now came to an end. But the Dutch ownership was brief. The same Stuyvesant, 9 years later, hauled down the Dutch flag, surrendered to the English fleet, and New Amsterdam henceforth became New York. After this, the Church of England became established by law, and it was with difficulty that even the Dutch could maintain their ancestral rights. The French Huguenots were an important part of the great body of the incoming colonists. The Edict of Nantes had been issued in the interest of the Protestants, who in France bore the name of Huguenots. It was not all they wished or merited, but it guaranteed certain civil and religious rights. When this edict was revoked by Louis XIV, 1685, it was a signal for violent persecution. As many as 500,000 of French Protestants were driven out of the country. Some went to Holland, others to Germany, others to England, others to the Cape of Good Hope, and still others to America. As early as 1662 we find Jean Tonton applying to the Massachusetts Bay Colony for permission to live there. He was granted the privilege. In 1686 a tract of 11,000 acres of land in Massachusetts was ceded to a Huguenot colony, who settled at Oxford. In 1656 a body of Huguenots was welcomed at New Amsterdam. They founded the town of New Rochelle on the East River. In 1666 there were Huguenots in Maryland, and in Virginia in 1671. In 1679 Charles II. Of England sent 2 shiploads of Huguenots to South Carolina. In 1703 the Huguenots were naturalized as citizens in New York. The Huguenots who came to America, and thus distributed themselves in various parts of the colonies, had neither the ambition nor the taste for political colonization. Their sole purpose was freedom for life and faith. No purer Europeans have ever landed on the American coast than the Huguenots of France. Their descendants have adorned every path of life, and in war and in peace their names have been in the front rank of Christians and citizens. The German immigration to America arose out of the persecution of Protestants in the Palatinate by the troops of Louis XIV. Of France. The French soldiers persecuted them without mercy. All were stripped of their possessions, and many were killed. Those who escaped had to flee the country. Some fled to northern Germany, where the Elector of Brandenburg gave them a cordial welcome to Berlin. Others fled to Ireland, and yet others settled in England. But the general wish was to reach America. Some settled along the Hudson and the Mohawk, but the most of the Germans went to Pennsylvania, distributing themselves from Philadelphia into the interior of the state. The new colony founded by William Penn received large accessions from the Germans. While they did not become Quakers, they were equally welcomed, and became an important population of the new colony. Before the Revolution, nearly all the Germans coming to America were Protestants. From Maine to Georgia they rapidly distributed themselves, uniting with the colonies in all their great interests, and helping to plant political liberty and an unfettered gospel. End of chapter 6.